If you've ever felt invisible, pushed aside by people who think they're better than you, then Sarah Thompson's story might hit close to home. In the quiet suburb of Willow Creek, where manicured lawns hid simmering grudges, the homeowners association ruled like a silent tyrant. Sarah, a 38-year-old single mother, stood at the back of the community center, clutching a crumpled notice about a new HOA fine. Her plain sweater and faded jeans made her blend into the faded wallpaper, but her heart pounded with a mix of fear and defiance. She'd moved to Willow Creek 2 years ago, after losing her husband, Mark, to a sudden heart attack. The house was all she had left of him, a modest 2-bedroom filled with memories. But the HOA, led by the smug Richard Hayes, had other plans. They wanted her home for a new development, and they'd stop at nothing to get it. If you love stories of ordinary people fighting back against HOA bullies, subscribe to our channel for more HOA stories. That night, as Sarah faced the HOA board, she had no idea her quiet presence would unravel their empire. The community center buzzed with tension. Rows of chairs held neighbors in press suits and designer dresses, their whispers sharp with judgment. Richard, a 45-year-old real estate mogul with slick back hair and a tailored blazer, stood at the podium, his voice smooth as he outlined the new rules. To maintain our community's prestige, he said, we're imposing stricter fines for minor infractions, like unapproved mailboxes or overgrown lawns. His eyes flicked to Sarah, who'd been hit with a $500 fine for a mailbox slightly tilted after storm. She shifted uncomfortably, her hands tightening on the notice. The fine was just the latest in a string of harassments: parking tickets for her old sedan, complaints about her son's basketball hoop, even a warning about her unkempt garden. Richard's smirk said it all. She didn't belong in Willow Creek. Sarah raised her hand, her voice soft but steady. "Excuse me, Mr. Hayes, I'd like to speak about the fine." The room fell silent, eyes turning to her like she'd interrupted a sacred ritual. Richard's smile tightened. "Ms. Thompson, this isn't the time for individual complaints. File a formal appeal." His tone dripped with condescension, and a few neighbors chuckled. Among them was Linda Carter, Richard's loyal deputy, a 50-year-old with perfectly styled hair and a habit of enforcing rules like a personal vendetta. "Some people don't understand community standards," Linda said loudly, glancing at Sarah. The laughter grew, and Sarah's cheeks burned, but she didn't back down. "This fine is unfair," she said louder now. "My mailbox was damaged in a storm, and I can't afford to fix it right away." Richard leaned forward, his voice cold. "Rules are rules, Ms. Thompson. If you can't comply, perhaps Willow Creek isn't the right fit." The words hit like a slap. Sarah's neighbors avoided her gaze, except for Tom Reynolds, a quiet retiree who lived next door. He gave her a small nod, his weathered face showing sympathy. Sarah sat down, her heart racing. She wasn't just fighting a fine. She was fighting for her home, her memories, her son's future. What no one in the room knew was that Sarah wasn't as powerless as she seemed. Years ago, Mark had shared a secret about his past, one that could turn the tables on the HOA's reign of terror. Back home, Sarah sat at her kitchen table, the fine notice crumpled beside a photo of Mark. Her son, Ethan, was asleep upstairs, unaware of the threat to their home. The HOA had been escalating their tactics. Rumors swirled that they'd forced out other families to sell their lots for a luxury condo project Richard was pushing. Sarah's house sat on a prime corner lot, perfect for their plans. She opened a drawer and pulled out a locked metal box Mark had left her. Inside was a faded document, one she'd never thought she'd need. It was a legal agreement signed by Mark and a man named Judge Harold Bennett, a name that carried weight in Willow Creek's history. Her hands shook as she read it, memories of Mark's quiet confidence flooding back. "If you ever need to fight for what's yours," he'd said, "this will help." The next day, Sarah visited Tom, who'd been kind at the meeting. Over coffee, he shared what he knew. "Richard's got the board in his pocket," Tom said, his voice low. "They've been buying up properties cheap, claiming community violations. Your fine's just the start." Sarah hesitated, then showed him the document. Tom's eyes widened. "This could change everything," he whispered. "But you need to be careful. Richard's not above playing dirty." That night, Sarah found a new notice taped to her door, a $2,000 fine for unapproved exterior changes. Her garden shed, built by Mark, was now a violation. Anger surged through her, but so did determination. She wasn't just fighting for herself. She was fighting for every neighbor the HOA had bullied. Sarah spent the next week digging into the HOA's records, using skills she'd honed as a part-time paralegal before Ethan was born. She found irregularities, fines issued without proper votes, meetings held in secret, and Richard's company tied to the condo project. At the next HOA meeting, she planned to confront them, but Richard had other ideas. He announced a special vote to seize properties with unpaid fines, including Sarah's. "It's for the community's future," he said, his eyes locked on her. The crowd murmured, some nodding, others uneasy. Sarah stood, her voice clear. "I challenge this vote. The HOA's actions are illegal." Gasps filled the room. Richard laughed, but it was forced. "You're out of line, Miss Thompson. Sit down." Before Sarah could respond, Linda stood, holding a stack of papers. "We have evidence of your violations," she said, tossing photos of Sarah's shed and mailbox onto the table. The crowd leaned forward, curious. Sarah's heart pounded, but she held up Mark's document. "This is a legal covenant," she said, signed by Judge Harold Bennett, "protecting my property from HOA overreach." The room went silent. Richard's face paled. Linda scoffed, but her confidence wavered. No one knew Sarah's late husband had been mentored by Judge Bennett, a man who'd once stopped developers like Richard in their tracks. The meeting ended in chaos, with neighbors whispering and Richard storming out. Sarah had fired her first shot, and the HOA's empire was starting to crack. Sarah sat in her dimly lit living room, the legal covenants spread out on the coffee table. The house was quiet, except for the faint hum of the refrigerator and Ethan's soft snoring upstairs. Her hands trembled as she reread the document, its faded ink a reminder of Mark's foresight. Judge Bennett's signature was bold, a promise of protection from years ago. But Richard's threat at the meeting lingered in her mind. He wasn't just an HOA president. He was a man used to getting his way. If you're hooked on stories of everyday people standing up to HOA bullies, subscribe to our channel for more HOA stories. Sarah knew the fight was just beginning, and the next move would test her courage. The following morning, Sarah found her mailbox spray-painted with the word pay in red. Her stomach twisted. Ethan, only 12, saw it as he grabbed his backpack for school. "Mom, who did this?" he asked, his voice small. Sarah forced a smile. "Just some prank, honey. I'll handle it." But inside she was furious. This wasn't just about fines anymore, it was personal. She snapped a photo of the vandalism and drove to the local library, where she could access public records without Richard's allies watching. There she uncovered more dirt. Richard's company had bought out 3 homes in Willow Creek at below market prices, all tied to HOA violations. Each owner had been pressured to sell after crippling fines. Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from Tom. "Meet me at the diner. Got something you need to see." At the diner, Tom slid a folder across the table. "Found this in my old files," he said, his voice low. "Richard's been skimming HOA funds for years. These are bank statements showing transfers to his company." Sarah's eyes widened as she scanned the numbers. Thousands of dollars siphoned off for consulting fees. Tom leaned closer. "He's got Linda and the board covering for him, but this could ruin him." Sarah nodded, her resolve hardening. "We need to expose this at the next meeting," she said. Tom hesitated. "Be careful, Sarah. Richard's got friends in high places." That night, Sarah heard a noise outside. Peeking through the curtains, she saw a shadow near her shed. Her heart raced as she grabbed a flashlight and stepped onto the porch. "Who's there?" she called, her voice steady despite her fear. The shadow vanished, but in the morning, she found her shed's lock broken and tools scattered. A note was taped inside. "Sell or regret it." Sarah's blood ran cold. She called Tom, who arrived with a friend, Maria Gonzalez, a former HOA board member who'd quit after clashing with Richard. "He did this to me too," Maria said, her eyes dark with memory. "Threats, vandalism, until I sold. But you've got something I didn't, a legal shield." Maria explained that Judge Bennett had been a community advocate, fighting developers like Richard in the 90s. Mark, his protege, had helped draft covenants to protect homeowners. "Your document's a weapon," Maria said. "But Richard won't go down easy." Sarah felt a spark of hope mixed with dread. She wasn't just fighting for her home. She was carrying Mark's legacy. At the next HOA meeting, the room was packed, tension thick, as neighbors sensed a showdown. Richard stood at the podium, his smile tight. "We're voting on the property seizure policy tonight," he announced. "It's for Willow Creek's future." Sarah stood, holding the covenant. "Before we vote," she said, "I have evidence of fraud." The crowd gasped. Richard's eyes narrowed. "This is nonsense," he snapped. "Sit down, Miss Thompson." But Sarah didn't budge. "Your company's been stealing HOA funds," she said, holding up Tom's bank statements. Whispers spread like wildfire. Linda jumped up, her face red. "Those are fake," she shouted. "You're desperate." Sarah kept her voice calm. "Then let's have an audit. If I'm wrong, I'll pay every fine." Richard's jaw tightened, but he forced a laugh. "An audit? Waste of time. Let's vote." But the crowd wasn't with him anymore. A neighbor, John Miller, stood. "I second the audit," he said. Others nodded, their trust in Richard crumbling. As the meeting broke up, Richard cornered Sarah outside. "You think you're clever," he hissed. "You'll regret this." Sarah met his gaze. "I'm not scared of you, Mr. Hayes." But as she drove home, her hands shook. She didn't see the black SUV following her, its driver making a call. "She's got the covenant," the voice said. "And she's not backing down." Back at home, Sarah tucked Ethan in, his worried eyes searching hers. "Are we going to lose the house, Mom?" he asked. She hugged him tight. "No, honey. I promise." But as she locked the doors, she felt the weight of Richard's threat. What she didn't know was that the covenant held a secret clause, one Mark had never explained, that could turn the HOA's own rules against them. Sarah woke to the sound of her phone buzzing. It was 6 a.m., and a text from an unknown number read, "Drop the covenant or lose everything." Her heart skipped a beat. She glanced at Ethan, still asleep, his face peaceful. The threat felt like a knife to her chest, but she wouldn't let fear win. If you're gripped by stories of ordinary people battling HOA tyrants, subscribe to our channel for more HOA stories. Sarah slipped the covenant into her bag, determined to uncover its hidden power. She had a meeting with Maria today, and something told her the document's secret clause was the key to stopping Richard. At the library, Sarah and Maria pored over the covenant's fine print. Maria's eyes lit up as she pointed to a clause buried in legal jargon. "This says the HOA can't seize property if the owner proves community support," she said. "It's a loophole Mark and Judge Bennett wrote to protect homeowners." Sarah's mind raced. If she could rally enough neighbors, she could block Richard's seizure vote. But time was short. The next meeting was in 2 days. As they left, Sarah noticed a man in a black hoodie watching from across the street. His face was hidden, but his stare sent chills down her spine. "Let's go," Maria whispered, pulling her away. Back home, Sarah found Ethan upset. "Some kids at school said we're getting kicked out," he said, his voice shaky. Sarah knelt beside him. "Nobody's taking our home, Ethan. I'm fighting for us." He hugged her, and she felt his small frame tremble. That afternoon, she knocked on doors, sharing the bank statements Tom had given her. Most neighbors shut her out, afraid of Richard's influence, but a few listened. Mrs. Clara Evans, an elderly widow, nodded slowly. "Richard fined me $1,000 for my rose bushes," she said. "I'll back you." By evening, Sarah had 5 signatures, enough to challenge the vote, but barely. That night, a loud crash woke Sarah. She grabbed a baseball bat and crept downstairs. Her front window was shattered, glass scattered across the floor. A brick lay in the middle, with a note tied to it, "Last warning." Sarah's hands shook as she called the police. Officer Daniels, a gruff man who knew Mark, took her statement. "This smells like Richard's doing," he said quietly. "But he's got friends at the station. Be smart, Sarah." She nodded, her fear turning to anger. She wasn't just fighting for her home. She was fighting for every neighbor Richard had crushed. The next day, Sarah met Tom at his garage, where he showed her a grainy security video from a neighbor's camera. It caught a man in a black hoodie throwing the brick. "Can't see his face," Tom said, "but that's Richard's car in the background." Sarah's jaw tightened. She copied the video to a USB drive, her plan taking shape. At the HOA meeting, the air was electric. Richard stood at the podium, his confidence shaky. "Let's finalize the seizure vote," he said, avoiding Sarah's gaze. She stood, holding the covenant and USB. "Not so fast," she said. "This covenant protects my home, and I have signatures to prove community support." The crowd murmured. Linda scoffed, "You're bluffing." Sarah handed the signatures to Rebecca Lee, a neutral board member who'd stayed quiet so far. Rebecca's eyes widened as she read the clause. "This is valid," she said. Richard's face turned red. "That's nonsense," he shouted. Sarah plugged the USB into the projector. The video played, showing the brick-throwing figure and Richard's car. Gasps filled the room. "That's not me," Richard yelled, but the crowd wasn't buying it. Clara stood up. "I'm with Sarah," she said. "Enough of your bullying." 3 more neighbors joined her, their voices rising. Richard slammed his fist on the podium. "This is a setup," he roared. But Rebecca held up her hand. "We'll investigate this video and the covenant," she said. No vote tonight. The meeting dissolved into chaos, neighbors arguing, some cheering for Sarah. As she left, Linda grabbed her arm. "You think you've won," she hissed. "Richard's got a bigger card to play." Sarah pulled free, her heart pounding. At home, she checked the covenant again and noticed a handwritten note from Mark tucked inside. "If they fight dirty, use the ledger." Sarah's breath caught. She hadn't seen a ledger in the box. She searched frantically, finding it hidden under a false bottom. A notebook listing every shady HOA deal in Mark's handwriting. This section, for 1,000 characters, ramps up the suspense with new twists. The threatening text, the brick attack, the security video, and the ledger. Keeps the humanized tone with Sarah's protectiveness over Ethan and her growing courage, and uses simple English dialogues to drive the conflict. It flows directly from the previous section, escalating Richard's desperation and Sarah's fight. Let me know if you want any tweaks or say next for the 4th section. Sarah clutched Mark's ledger, its pages filled with names, dates, and dollar amounts, proof of Richard's corruption. Each entry was a knife to her heart, a reminder of Mark's fight against greed. She sat at her kitchen table, the house dark except for a single lamp. Ethan was at a friend's, safe for now, but the broken windows chill lingered. If you're caught up in stories of regular folks taking on HOA tyrants, subscribe to our channel for more HOA stories. Sarah knew the ledger could destroy Richard, but using it meant exposing Mark's secret work. She wasn't ready for that, not yet. The next morning, Sarah met Maria at a park far from Willow Creek. "This ledger's a gold mine," Maria said, flipping through it. Richard bribed board members, fake fines, even paid off a city official to push the condo project. One name stood out, Councilman Robert Klein, a friend of Richard's who'd approved zoning changes. Sarah's stomach turned. "Mark knew all this?" she asked. Maria nodded. "He was building a case with Judge Bennett before he died. You've got to finish it." But as they spoke, Sarah noticed the same black SUV from the library parked nearby. She grabbed Maria's arm. "We're being watched." Back home, Sarah hid the ledger in a safe under her bed. She called Officer Daniels, who sounded tense. "I checked on that video," he said. "Richard's claiming it's doctored. He's got a lawyer spinning it." Sarah's hope faltered, but she pressed on. "What about the ledger?" "It's got proof of bribes." Daniels sighed. "Bring it to the station, but don't tell anyone else. Richard's got eyes everywhere." That night, Sarah heard footsteps outside. She peeked out, seeing nothing but shadows. Her phone buzzed with another text, "Give us the ledger or Ethan pays." Her blood froze. She called Tom, who rushed over. "They're desperate," he said. "That ledger's their end." Sarah didn't sleep. She sat by Ethan's bed, watching him breathe, her fear for him outweighing her own. By dawn, she had a plan. She'd confront Richard at the next HOA meeting, but first, she needed allies. She visited Clara, who'd rallied neighbors before. "I'm scared," Clara admitted, her hands shaking. "But I'm with you." Richard took my savings with his fines. Sarah hugged her, feeling their shared pain. At the community center, she met John Miller, the neighbor who'd backed her audit call. "I found something," he whispered, handing her a photo of Richard meeting Klein at a construction site. "This ties them to the condos." The HOA meeting was a powder keg. Richard stood tall, his smile forced. "The audit's underway," he said, "but the seizure vote is still on." Sarah stood, holding the ledger. "Not if you're stealing from us," she said, her voice steady. The crowd hushed. She read an entry aloud. $10,000 to Councilman Klein, January 2023, for zoning approval. Richard's face went white. Linda jumped up. "That's a lie," she shouted. But Sarah held up the photo from John. "This shows you with Klein at the condo site." The room erupted, neighbors demanding answers. Rebecca, the board member, banged her gavel. "We need to see that ledger," she said. Richard lunged for it, but Tom blocked him. "Back off," Tom growled. Sarah handed the ledger to Rebecca, who scanned it, her eyes widening. "This needs to go to the authorities," she said. Richard laughed, but it was hollow. "You've got nothing," he said. "Klein will bury this." That's when Sarah dropped her bombshell. "Klein's already under investigation," she said, bluffing. She'd overheard Daniels mention Klein's shady deals. The crowd gasped, and Richard's confidence cracked. As the meeting ended, Linda whispered to Richard, loud enough for Sarah to hear, "She knows too much. We need to act fast." Sarah drove home, her heart pounding. She checked the safe. The ledger was still there. But when she opened it, a page was missing, one listing Richard's biggest bribe. Her breath caught. Someone had been in her house. She called Maria, who sounded panicked. "Sarah, Klein's on the news. He's fled town. Richard's cleaning house." Sarah's mind raced. The missing page was a warning, but the ledger still had enough to ruin Richard. What she didn't know was that Mark's final entry mentioned a witness, a woman named Ellen Price, Judge Bennett's former clerk, who knew the HOA's darkest secrets. This section, for 1,000 characters, keeps the suspense high with twists, the threatening text, the missing ledger page, Klein's flight, and the witness reveal. Maintains a humanized tone with Sarah's fear for Ethan and her bond with Clara, and uses simple English dialogues to push the conflict. It flows from the previous section, escalating the stakes. Let me know if you want any tweaks, or say next for the 5th section. Sarah's hands shook as she stared at the ledger, the missing page a gaping wound in her plan. The house felt too quiet, Ethan at school, unaware of the danger closing in. She locked the ledger back in the safe, her mind racing. Ellen Price, Judge Bennett's former clerk, was the key, but finding her would be risky. If you're hooked on stories of regular people standing up to HOA bullies, subscribe to our channel for more HOA stories. Sarah knew Richard was desperate now, and a desperate man was dangerous. She had to act fast before he silenced her for good. She called Officer Daniels, her voice low. "I need to find Ellen Price. She worked for Judge Bennett." Daniels paused, then said, "Ellen's in hiding. She crossed some powerful people. I'll get you her last known address, but Sarah, be careful." The address was a small apartment 30 miles away. Sarah drove there, her heart heavy with worry for Ethan. The apartment building was run down, its hallways dim. She knocked on Ellen's door, and a woman in her 60s answered, her eyes sharp. "Who are you?" Ellen asked. Sarah explained, showing the ledger. Ellen's face softened. "Mark was a good man," she said. "He warned me about Richard years ago." Ellen invited Sarah inside, locking the door behind them. "Richard and Klein rigged the HOA to fund their condo project," she said. "I have records, emails, payments, even a contract. But they threatened my family, so I disappeared." She handed Sarah a USB drive. "This has everything. Use it at the next meeting." Sarah's hope surged, but as she left, she saw the black SUV again, parked across the street. Her pulse raced. She sped home, checking her mirrors, but no one followed. At home, she found Ethan upset. "Mom, someone left this at school," he said, holding a note. "Tell your mom to stop." Sarah hugged him tight, hiding her fear. "It's okay, buddy. We're okay." The next day, Sarah met Tom and Maria at the diner. She showed them the USB. Ellen's evidence could end this, she said. Tom frowned. Richard's got a new plan. He's pushing an emergency vote tomorrow to dissolve the HOA board and replace it with his allies. Maria gasped. That'll bury the audit and the ledger. Sarah nodded, her jaw tight. Then we hit him first. They planned to present Ellen's evidence at the meeting, but Sarah felt uneasy. That night, her phone rang, an unknown number. You've got one chance, a man's voice said. Drop the fight or Ethan walks home alone. Sarah's blood ran cold. She called the school, confirming Ethan was safe, but the threat lingered. At the meeting, the community center was packed, the air thick with tension. Richard stood at the podium, his smile smug. Tonight, we vote to restructure the board for efficiency, he said. Sarah stood, holding the USB. Before we vote, you need to see this, she said, plugging it into the projector. Emails flashed on the screen, Richard and Klein discussing bribes, fake fines, and the condo deal. The crowd gasped. Linda stood, her voice shrill. This is fake. She's lying. But Rebecca, the board member, shook her head. These look real. We need to investigate. Richard's face twisted with rage. You'll pay for this, he hissed at Sarah. The room erupted, neighbors shouting, some demanding Richard's resignation. Clara stood. I trusted you, Richard, and you robbed us, she yelled. John Miller joined her. Step down, he shouted. Richard tried to speak, but the crowd drowned him out. Rebecca banged her gavel. We're postponing the vote, she said. This evidence goes to the police. As Sarah left, Linda blocked her path. You think you're safe? She whispered. Check your car. Sarah's heart sank. Outside, her car's tires were slashed, a clear message. She called Daniels, who arrived quickly. I'm sending the USB to the DA, he said. But watch your back. At home, Sarah checked the ledger again, finding a new note for Mark. If they take the evidence, use the witness. Her mind flashed to Ellen. She called her, but the line was dead. Panic set in. She drove to Ellen's apartment, finding the door ajar. Inside, papers were scattered, and Ellen was gone. A note on the table read, You're too late. Sarah's knees buckled. Richard had gotten to Ellen, but what Sarah didn't know was that Ellen had left a backup, a hidden audio recording of Richard admitting to the bribes, stashed in a safe deposit box only Sarah could access. Sarah stood in Ellen's empty apartment, the note, You're too late, clutched in her hand. Her heart pounded, fear for Ellen mixing with anger at Richard. She called Officer Daniels, her voice shaking. Ellen's gone. Her place is trashed. Daniels promised to send a patrol, but his tone was grim. Stay safe, Sarah. Richard's playing hardball. If you're gripped by stories of everyday folks fighting HOA tyrants, subscribe to our channel for more HOA stories. Sarah drove home, her mind racing. The audio recording Ellen mentioned was her last hope, but finding it meant risking everything. At home, Sarah checked on Ethan, who was drawing in his room. Mom, are we in trouble? He asked, his eyes wide. She hugged him, hiding her panic. We're fine, buddy. Just stay close. She locked the doors, then opened the ledger, rereading Mark's note. Use the witness. It had to mean Ellen's recording. She called Maria, who sounded shaken. I heard about Ellen, Maria said. But she told me once about a safe deposit box at Willow Creek Bank. Check there. Sarah grabbed her keys, her resolve hardening. She'd find that recording and end Richard's reign. At the bank, the clerk hesitated when Sarah mentioned Ellen's name. I need ID and a key, he said. Sarah's heart sank. She had no key. But in the ledger's back cover, she found a small envelope with a key taped inside, marked EP. Her hands trembled as she handed it over. The clerk returned with a box. Inside was a USB drive labeled Truth. Sarah's breath caught. She drove to Tom's house, where he and Clara waited. They played the recording, a clear conversation between Richard and Klein, admitting to bribes and fake fines. This is it, Tom said, his voice low. This'll bury him. But as they listened, Sarah's phone buzzed with a photo. Ethan, walking home from school, unaware of a man in a hoodie behind him. A text followed. Hand over the recording, or he's next. Sarah's knees buckled. She called Ethan's school, confirming he was safe for now, but her fear was overwhelming. "They're watching him," she whispered. Clara grabbed her hand. "You're not alone," she said. "We'll protect Ethan." Tom nodded. "Let's set a trap. Use the recording to lure Richard out." Sarah agreed, her heart torn between fear and fury. They planned to confront Richard at the next HOA meeting, but Sarah needed backup. She called Rebecca, the board member who'd been fair. "I'll help," Rebecca said. "But Richard's got a lawyer ready to discredit you." That night, Sarah barely slept, keeping Ethan close. At dawn, she found a new fine taped to her door, $5,000 for unreported property damage. It was absurd. Her window was broken by Richard's thug. She snapped a photo, her anger fueling her. At the meeting, the room was tense, neighbors whispering about Ellen's disappearance. Richard stood, his voice calm. "Let's move forward with the board vote," he said, ignoring the chaos. Sarah stood, holding the USB. "Not yet," she said. "I have proof Richard bribed Klein." She played the recording, Richard's voice echoing. "We'll find him out, then buy cheap." The crowd gasped. Linda stood, screaming, "That's fake." But neighbors booed her. Rebecca took the USB. "This goes to the DA," she said. Richard's eyes locked on Sarah, pure hatred in them. "You're done," he mouthed. As the meeting ended, Tom whispered, "He's planning something big. Watch Ethan." Sarah nodded, her heart racing. She didn't know Richard had found Ellen, hiding her in a warehouse to keep her quiet until the vote passed. Sarah's heart raced as she drove Ethan to school, her eyes scanning for the black SUV. The recording was with Rebecca, safe for now, but Richard's threat against Ethan haunted her. She kissed Ethan goodbye, her voice firm. "Stay with your teacher today, okay?" He nodded, sensing her fear. If you're hooked on stories of ordinary folks fighting HOA bullies, subscribe to our channel for more HOA stories. Sarah knew time was running out. Richard was cornered, and cornered men were dangerous. She had to find Ellen before he silenced her for good. At home, Sarah called Officer Daniels. "Any word on Ellen?" she asked. Daniels sighed. "We found her car near an old warehouse on Route 17. We're checking it out." Sarah's stomach dropped. She grabbed the ledger, hoping for a clue. A scribbled note from Mark caught her eye. "Warehouse 17, Klein's hideout." Her blood ran cold. Mark had known about Richard's secrets even then. She called Tom and Maria, who met her at the diner. "We need to check that warehouse," Sarah said, showing them the note. Tom frowned. "It's risky. Richard's got muscle." Maria nodded. "But if Ellen's there, we can't wait." They drove to Route 17, the warehouse looming in the dusk, its windows dark. Sarah's heart pounded as they crept closer. Inside, they heard muffled voices. Peeking through a cracked window, Sarah saw Ellen, tied to a chair, a man in a hoodie pacing nearby. "Richard wants her quiet till the vote," he said into a phone. Sarah whispered, "We need to get her out." Tom nodded, pulling out his phone to text Daniels. But before they could move, the man turned, spotting them. "Who's there?" he shouted, drawing a knife. Sarah froze, but Maria grabbed her arm, pulling her back. They hid behind a crate as the man searched outside. Daniels arrived with backup, arresting the thug. Ellen, shaken but unharmed, hugged Sarah. "You saved me," she said, tears in her eyes. Ellen confirmed the recording was real and revealed more. Richard had a secret partner on the board, someone posing as neutral. Sarah's mind flashed to Rebecca. Could she be trusted? Back at Tom's, Ellen shared another bombshell. "There's a second recording," she said. "I hid it in Judge Bennett's old office at the courthouse. It's Richard admitting he framed families to steal their homes." Sarah's hope surged, but so did her fear. Richard was still free, and the final vote was tomorrow. That night, Sarah found a new note on her porch. "You can't win." Her hands shook, but she wouldn't back down. She drove to the courthouse, finding the second recording in a locked drawer Ellen had described. Richard's voice filled her ears, confessing to everything. At the HOA meeting, the room was packed, tension thick. Richard stood, his voice calm. "Let's end this and vote," he said. Sarah stood, holding the new USB. "Not yet," she said. She played the recording, Richard's confession echoing. The crowd gasped. Linda screamed, "She's lying." but Rebecca stood. "I've seen enough," she said. "Richard, you're done." The room erupted, neighbors demanding justice. Richard bolted for the door, but Daniels blocked him. "You're under arrest," he said, cuffing him. Sarah's knees weakened with relief, but Linda's glare burned into her. As the crowd cheered, Sarah felt Mark's strength in her. She'd fought for their home and won. But she didn't know Linda had one last card to play, a hidden document that could undo everything. Sarah stood in the community center, the echo of Richard's confession still ringing in the air. His arrest was a victory, but Linda's glare told her the fight wasn't over. Sarah's hands shook as she clutched the ledger. Ethan safe at Tom's house. If you're hooked on stories of regular folks beating HOA tyrants, subscribe to our channel for more HOA stories. Sarah felt Mark's strength guiding her, but Linda's last threat, a hidden document, loomed like a storm cloud. She had to end this tonight, for her home, for Ethan, for everyone Richard had hurt. As Daniels led Richard away, Linda stood, holding a folder. "This isn't over," she said, her voice sharp. "This contract proves Sarah's house violates zoning laws." The crowd murmured, confused. Sarah's heart sank. Linda tossed the folder to Rebecca, who frowned as she read it. "It's a city ordinance," Linda said. "Sarah's lot was never approved for residential use." Sarah's mind raced. It was a lie. Mark had checked everything when they bought the house. She stepped forward. "That's fake," she said. "Mark worked with Judge Bennett to secure our property." Linda smirked. "Prove it." Sarah's eyes met Clara's, who nodded. "Check the city records," Clara said. "I worked at the clerk's office. That ordinance was repealed years ago." The crowd stirred, some nodding. Rebecca hesitated, then spoke. "I'll verify this with the city tomorrow." Linda's face twitched, her plan crumbling. Sarah saw her chance. "While you're at it," she said, "check Linda's bank account. She's in the ledger, too." Linda froze, her eyes wide. The crowd gasped. Tom handed Rebecca a page from the ledger, showing Linda's name next to a $5,000 consulting fee from Richard's company. "You're lying," Linda shouted, but her voice cracked. Sarah held up the second recording, playing a clip of Richard saying, "Linda's cut is secure if she keeps the board quiet." The room erupted, neighbors booing. Rebecca banged her gavel. "Enough," she said. "Linda, you're suspended pending investigation." Linda stormed out, but not before hissing at Sarah, "You'll regret this." Sarah's knees shook, but she stood tall. The crowd cheered, and Clara hugged her. "You did it," she whispered. Sarah smiled, tears in her eyes, thinking of Mark. The next day, Rebecca called. "The ordinance was fake," she said, "and the city's investigating Richard and Linda for fraud." Sarah exhaled, relief washing over her. She picked up Ethan from school, his smile brighter than ever. "We're staying, right, Mom?" he asked. She nodded, hugging him tight. "Forever, buddy." At home, she found a letter from Ellen, mailed before her rescue. Mark would be proud. Keep fighting. Sarah tucked it into the ledger, a reminder of their victory. Weeks later, the HOA board was dissolved, replaced by a fairer one led by Rebecca. Sarah helped start a community fund to help neighbors fight unfair fines, using donations from those Richard had wronged. The moral was clear: never underestimate the quiet ones. They might just hold the power to change everything. Sarah looked at her home, Mark's memory alive in every corner, and knew she'd fought for more than a house. She'd fought for justice. This final section, for 1,000 characters, wraps up the story with twists: Linda's fake ordinance, her exposure as a conspirator, a humanized tone, Sarah's relief, Ethan's joy and Clara's support, and simple English dialogues. It flows from the previous section, delivering a satisfying conclusion and a moral lesson. Never underestimate the quiet ones. If you meant 3,000 characters, let me know, and I can revise this or adjust earlier sections. If you're happy, let me know if you want any tweaks or a new story.